She was only 12 years old and had a life marked by hardships, but carried something priceless: honesty. By returning a wallet full of money without hesitation, she triggered a reaction that would change everything. Unknowingly, that simple gesture would lead her straight to a reunion with her forgotten past. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The chill of Boston's autumn air cut through Emma Riley's thin uniform jacket as she walked home from Jefferson Middle School. At 12 years old, she'd already mastered the art of ignoring her growling stomach until dinner. Today was Thursday, pasta night, when her mum would somehow stretch a single box of spaghetti to feed all four of them. Emma glanced down at her worn sneakers, the left one with a small hole developing near the pinky toe. She'd have to ask for duct tape from Mr. Jenkins, the building superintendent. He always kept some handy for the residents of Orchard Heights, the affordable housing complex where her family had lived since she was 8. One more winter, she whispered to herself. Just hold together one more winter. The words weren't just for her shoes, they were for everything. The electricity that flickered when they ran too many appliances, the ancient refrigerator that hummed aggressively through the night, her parents' whispered arguments about bills when they thought she was asleep. Emma was different from the other kids in her neighborhood. While many had grown cynical beyond their years, she maintained an unwavering sense of right and wrong, principles instilled by her grandmother Rose, who had passed away 2 years ago. "Your integrity is the one thing nobody can take from you," Grandma Rose would say, her weathered hands clasping Emma's smaller ones. "Even when your pockets are empty, your character can be full." Today, Emma had taken a different route home, cutting through Beacon Hill, one of Boston's wealthiest neighborhoods. She didn't usually venture through these streets with their perfectly maintained brownstones and luxury cars, but Mrs. Peterson had kept her after school to discuss a potential scholarship opportunity, and this was the shortest way home. The shop windows along Charles Street displayed items Emma could scarcely imagine owning: cashmere sweaters, artisanal chocolates, handcrafted jewelry. She paused outside a boutique selling scarves that probably cost more than her family's weekly grocery budget. One day, she promised herself, though without much conviction. Her parents worked harder than anyone she knew. Her mother, Sarah, juggled 3 jobs: morning shifts at a bakery, afternoon receptionist work at a dental office, and weekend housekeeping at a hotel. Her father, Mark, worked construction when his back allowed it, and drove for a rideshare service when it didn't. Despite their efforts, financial security remained elusive. Lost in thought, Emma barely noticed the commotion ahead until she was in the middle of it. A crowd had gathered near the entrance to Espresso Elevation, one of those fancy coffee shops where a single drink cost $7. Through gaps between adults in expensive coats, she could see a tall man in an impeccable navy suit barking orders into his phone while juggling a leather briefcase, a tablet, and a paper coffee cup. "I need those projections before the board meeting, Carolyn." "No excuses," the man said, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "The Wellington acquisition isn't going to wait, just because your team can't meet a deadline." Emma watched, fascinated by his confidence, when suddenly the man fumbled with his belongings. As he adjusted his grip on the briefcase, something fell from under his arm. A sleek burgundy leather wallet that hit the sidewalk with a soft thud. The man, still engrossed in his call, continued walking, completely unaware of what he'd dropped. Emma's heart skipped a beat. The wallet lay there, slightly open, revealing the edge of what looked like several $100 bills. No one else seemed to notice, or if they did, they were pretending not to. A businessman checked his watch and hurried past. A woman with shopping bags deliberately stepped around it. Time seemed to slow as Emma stared at the wallet. With trembling fingers, she picked it up. It was heavier than she expected, and warm from being pressed against its owner's body. The leather was butter soft, real leather, not the synthetic kind that covered her mother's worn purse. "Hey," she called out, but the man was already half a block away, his long strides carrying him quickly toward the public garden. "Sir, wait!" Emma clutched the wallet and ran. Her backpack bounced uncomfortably against her spine, and her worn sneakers slapped against the pavement. Thoughts raced through her mind. What was inside? Probably enough money to fix the broken heater in their apartment. Maybe enough for new shoes for her little brother Jason, who had been wearing the same pair for 2 years. Perhaps even enough to buy her mother a real birthday present instead of the handmade cards and paper flowers Emma usually crafted. But Grandma Rose's voice echoed louder than these thoughts. Character is doing the right thing when nobody's watching. "Sir," Emma called again, louder this time. The man had stopped at a crosswalk, still talking animatedly on his phone. "Excuse me." When she finally reached him, she was out of breath. The man turned, annoyance flashing across his features at being interrupted. "What is it?" he asked sharply, placing his hand over the phone's microphone. Emma held out the wallet. "You dropped this, sir." The irritation on his face dissolved into surprise. He patted his coat pocket, eyes widening with the realization. "I'll call you back, Carolyn," he said into the phone before ending the call. He took the wallet, opened it, and quickly checked its contents. Emma glimpsed credit cards, business cards, and a substantial amount of cash. The relief on the man's face was palpable. "You ran all this way to return my wallet?" he asked, studying her more carefully now, taking in her worn uniform, scuffed shoes, and the thin jacket inadequate for the October chill. "Yes, sir," Emma replied simply. "Most people would have kept it," he said, almost to himself. "There's over $2,000 in here." Emma swallowed hard at the sum, more money than she'd ever seen in one place, but shook her head. "It's not mine." The man's expression softened. "What's your name, young lady?" "Emma Riley." "Emma Riley," he repeated as if testing how the name felt. "I'm Nathaniel Harrington. Thank you for your honesty." He reached into the wallet and pulled out several bills. Emma shook her head quickly. "I don't want a reward, Mr. Harrington. My grandma always said that doing the right thing is its own reward." Something flickered in Nathaniel Harrington's eyes. Surprise, certainly, but something else too. Something that looked almost like recognition, though Emma was sure they'd never met before. How could they have? Men like him didn't visit places, like Orchard Heights. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman," he said finally. "Where do you live, Emma? It's getting late. Let me call my driver to take you home." "Oh, that's not necessary," Emma replied quickly, suddenly self-conscious about the contrast between his world and hers. "I live in Orchard Heights. It's not far." Nathaniel's expression changed again, this time with a stillness that made Emma nervous. "Orchard Heights," he repeated. "And your parents, what are their names?" The question seemed odd, but his tone was gentle. "Sarah and Mark Riley," she answered. Nathaniel Harrington went very quiet, studying Emma's face with an intensity that made her shift uncomfortably. He seemed to be looking for something in her features. "Mr. Harrington, are you okay?" He blinked as if coming back from a distant thought. "Yes, I'm fine, just—" "Thank you again, Emma Riley. Your honesty is remarkable." He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card. "Please take this. If you or your family ever need anything, don't hesitate to call." Emma accepted the card, reading the embossed lettering. Nathaniel Harrington, CEO, Harrington, Innovations. Below that was a phone number with a direct extension. "Thank you," she said, carefully placing the card in her backpack's front pocket. "No, Emma," Nathaniel said, his voice suddenly thick with an emotion she couldn't identify. "Thank you." As a tea. She turned to continue her journey home. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, something beyond returning a lost wallet. What she didn't see was Nathaniel Harrington, remaining rooted to the spot, watching her walk away, his expression a complex mixture of shock, wonder, and an unmistakable spark of hope. Nathaniel Harrington hadn't always been the kind of man who carried $2,000 in cash. Growing up in a middle-class suburb of Springfield, Massachusetts, he'd known the value of $1 long before he began multiplying them into millions. But at 52, after building Harrington Innovations into a tech empire worth billions, such details rarely occupied his thoughts, until today. Back in his penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, Nathaniel loosened his tie and poured himself 2 fingers of single malt scotch. The wallet lay on his marble countertop, a burgundy rectangle that had nearly altered the trajectory of his carefully orchestrated life. "Orchard Heights," he murmured, swirling the amber liquid. "After all this time." He pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed a number he rarely used, but never forgot. "Diana," he said when the call connected, "I need you to expedite that investigation we discussed last week. I believe I've found her." An hour later, Nathaniel sat in his home office, staring at a file that had been delivered electronically by his most trusted private investigator. The contents confirmed what his instincts had already told him when he looked into Emma Riley's face, those hazel eyes that were so much like his own, the determined set of her jaw that mirrored his mother's. 12 years ago, Elizabeth Winters had disappeared from his life after their brief affair ended badly. She'd been a graduate student at MIT when they met, brilliant, beautiful, and from a social background that his family found unacceptable. When she told him she was pregnant, his parents had intervened swiftly and decisively, offering Elizabeth enough money to disappear and start fresh somewhere else. Nathaniel, young and ambitious, had allowed this to happen, telling himself it was for the best. 6 months ago, guilt and regret had finally driven him to search for the child he'd never known. The investigation revealed that Elizabeth had given birth to a daughter, but had surrendered her for adoption shortly after. The trail had gone cold until last week, when Diana had narrowed down the search to 3 possible matches in the Boston area. "Emma Riley," Nathaniel whispered, touching the photo in the file. According to the records, Sarah and Mark Riley had adopted a baby girl 12 years ago through a private adoption agency, the same agency Elizabeth had used. The timing matched perfectly, and now, by some twist of fate beyond comprehension, that same girl had returned his wallet. His doorbell rang, pulling him from his thoughts. Diana Mercer stood in the hallway, her usual professional demeanor slightly rumpled after what had clearly been a rush across the city. "I came as soon as I could," she said, stepping into the penthouse. "Your message sounded urgent." Nathaniel led her to his office and poured her a glass of water. "I met her today," he said without preamble. "Emma Riley. She found my wallet on the street and ran after me to return it." Diana's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a coincidence." "Is it?" Nathaniel asked, more to himself than to Diana. "Of all the people in Boston who could have found my wallet, it was her. The universe has a strange sense of humor." "What are you planning to do now?" Diana asked, ever practical. Nathaniel walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights reflecting off the harbor. "I need to know more about her situation, her family." "I've already gathered preliminary information," Diana said, opening her laptop. "The Rileys live in Orchard Heights, a subsidized housing development. Mark Riley works construction but has been struggling with back problems for years. Sarah Riley works multiple jobs. They're behind on rent 3 months out of 12 on average. They have another child, a son named Jason, who's 8. "They're struggling," Nathaniel said quietly. "Yes, but from all accounts they're good parents. Emma is an excellent student, straight A's despite their financial circumstances. No reports of neglect or abuse, they're just poor." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "I want to help them, but I need to be careful. If Emma is my daughter, I can't just burst into their lives with checkbook in hand. That would be disruptive." "What's your approach then?" Diana asked. Nathaniel turned from the window, his decision made. "I'm going to create an opportunity. Something that seems coincidental, but gives me a chance to get to know them, and for them to know me." 3 days later, Mark Riley received a phone call that would change everything. Harrington Innovations was launching a new community outreach program focused on renovating homes in underserved neighborhoods, starting with Orchard Heights. As someone with construction experience, Mark was being offered a position as a project supervisor, a job that came with a substantial salary increase, benefits, and regular hours. "I don't understand," Mark said, his voice thick with suspicion and hope. "Why me? I've been out of steady work for months." "Your name came highly recommended by Jefferson Middle School," lied the HR representative, following Nathaniel's script. "We're partnering with local schools to identify families with strong community ties. Your daughter Emma's academic record and character references were impressive." That same day, Sarah Riley received a similar call. The dental office where she worked part-time was being acquired by a medical group affiliated with Harrington Innovations. All staff were being offered full-time positions with comprehensive benefits. Meanwhile, Emma found an envelope in her school locker. Inside was a letter announcing she'd been selected for a prestigious scholarship program that would cover educational, enrichment activities, college preparation, and a new laptop. The letterhead bore the Harrington Foundation logo. That evening, the Riley family sat around their small kitchen table, comparing notes on their sudden reversal of fortune. "It doesn't make sense," Sarah said, her expression caught between joy and disbelief. "Things like this don't just happen. Maybe it's some kind of mistake," Mark added, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Maybe they'll realize they called the wrong Riley family. Or maybe it's because Emma returned that rich guy's wallet." 8-year-old Jason piped up, his mouth full of macaroni and cheese. "Like in those movies where one good deed changes everything." Emma remained quiet, fingering the business card she'd kept in her pocket since that day. Nathaniel Harrington, CEO, Harrington Innovations, the same name that now appeared on her scholarship letter, her father's job offer, her mother's workplace. Acquisition. "Could it be?" Sarah asked, noticing Emma's silence. "Honey, did something happen that you haven't told us about?" Emma pulled out the business card and placed it on the table. "I found a wallet on the street last week. It belonged to this man. There was a lot of money inside, but I gave it back to him." Mark picked up the card, his eyes widening. "Harrington, as in Harrington Innovations? Emma, that's one of the biggest tech companies in the country." "He asked about you," Emma said quietly, "about where we lived, about your names." Sarah and Mark exchanged looks. A silent communication developed over years of weathering hardships together. "Why would a billionaire care about us?" Sarah wondered aloud. "Maybe he just wants to help," Emma suggested. "Grandma Rose always said that kindness creates ripples." "Kindness from billionaires usually comes with strings attached," Mark muttered, though his tone lacked conviction. The prospect of stable work without constant pain was too tempting to dismiss outright. "I think we should at least see what this is about," Sarah said finally. "The worst that happens is we're back where we started." Emma nodded, though something inside her suspected that nothing would ever be the same again. The mysterious Mr. Harrington had looked at her with such strange intensity, almost as if he'd been searching for something in her face. And now these opportunities, all connected to him, arriving simultaneously like perfectly orchestrated dominoes. Across the city, Nathaniel sat in his office, waiting for a call. He'd orchestrated everything meticulously, creating legitimate opportunities that would benefit the Rileys without seeming like charity. The foundation scholarship was real. Emma's academic records justified her selection. Mark's construction experience made him a suitable candidate for the position. The dental office acquisition had been in the works anyway. Moving Sarah to full-time simply made good business sense. But beneath these practical justifications lay the truth. Nathaniel Harrington was attempting to build a bridge to the daughter he'd never known existed, and to the family that had raised her when he hadn't. His phone rang at precisely 8:47 p.m. "Mr. Harrington? This is Sarah Riley. I believe you know my daughter, Emma." Nathaniel took a deep breath, steadying himself for the conversation that would set everything in motion. "Mrs. Riley," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Thank you for calling. I've been hoping to speak with you and your husband about a matter of some importance." "Does this have to do with the sudden job offers and scholarship my family has received?" Sarah asked directly. Nathaniel appreciated her forthright approach. "Yes, it does. But the explanation is complex. Would you and your husband be willing to meet with me, perhaps tomorrow evening?" There was a pause on the line, a moment of consideration that seemed to stretch for eternity. "Yes," Sarah finally replied. "I think we would." The Harrington Tower dominated Boston's financial district, 62 floors of gleaming glass and steel that reflected the setting sun like a beacon. Sarah and Mark Riley stood in the marble-floored lobby, feeling distinctly out of place among the tailored suits and designer dresses that flowed around them like schools of expensive fish. "Maybe we should have dressed up more," Sarah whispered, smoothing the front of her best blouse, a 3-year-old navy garment she reserved for parent-teacher conferences and job interviews. Mark squeezed her hand. "We're fine, we're not here to impress anyone." But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Whatever Nathaniel Harrington wanted from them, appearing dignified seemed important. They'd left Emma and Jason with Mrs. Patel from next door, telling them they had a meeting about the new jobs. They hadn't mentioned Harrington specifically, an omission that felt necessary until they understood what was happening. "Mr. and Mrs. Riley?" A polished young woman approached them. "I'm Alexis, Mr. Harrington's executive assistant. He's waiting for you in the private dining room. Please follow me." The elevator whisked them to the 60th floor, where Alexis led them through a series of elegant corridors to a room with a spectacular view of Boston Harbor. Nathaniel Harrington stood as they entered, his tall frame silhouetted against the panoramic windows. "Sarah, Mark. Thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. "Please, have a seat." The private dining room contained only a small table set for 3, with a bottle of wine already breathing. No corporate boardroom, no lawyers, no formality, just an intimate setting that somehow made Sarah more nervous, not less. "Your building is impressive," Mark said, clearly trying to break the tension as they sat. "Just a place to work," Nathaniel replied with a self-deprecating smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He seemed tense, Sarah noticed, a man accustomed to control who was suddenly navigating uncertain territory. "Mr. Harrington," Sarah began, deciding directness was their best approach, "we appreciate the opportunities you've extended to our family, but we'd like to understand why. Emma returning your wallet was certainly honest, but this level of intervention in our lives seems disproportionate." Nathaniel nodded slowly, pouring wine for each of them. "You're right, of course. The truth is, my interest in your family goes beyond Emma's act of honesty, admirable as it was." He took a deep breath. "What I'm about to tell you may be difficult. Had to hear, and for that, I apologize in advance." Sarah felt Mark stiffen beside her. 12 years ago," Nathaniel continued, "I had a relationship with a woman named Elizabeth Winters. When she became pregnant, my family intervened. They convinced her to leave Boston with enough money to start fresh elsewhere. I was young, ambitious, more concerned with my career than with doing the right thing. I let it happen." Sarah's hand found Mark's under the table, gripping it tightly. "6 months ago, I hired a private investigator to find that child," Nathaniel said, his voice growing quieter. "The search led to a private adoption through the New Beginnings agency. The timing, the circumstances, they all point to Emma." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the building's ventilation system. Sarah felt as though the floor had suddenly vanished beneath her feet. Mark's face had gone pale. "Are you saying—" Mark began, then stopped, unable to finish the question. "I believe Emma is my biological daughter," Nathaniel confirmed gently. "I have documents, adoption records, the investigator's findings, even a DNA profile from Elizabeth that shows genetic markers consistent with Emma's medical records from Jefferson Middle School." "You accessed her medical records?" Sarah's voice rose sharply. "That's private information." "I apologize for the intrusion," Nathaniel said, having the grace to look ashamed. "When you've spent decades building a technology empire, certain ethical boundaries become blurred. It was wrong of me." "Why now?" Mark demanded, his voice rough with emotion. "It's been 12 years. We're her parents. We've been there for every skinned knee, every nightmare, every school play. Where were you when she had pneumonia at age 4 and we couldn't afford the prescription? Where were you when she needed braces but we had to tell her to wait because the insurance wouldn't cover it?" Nathaniel absorbed the accusations without defense. "Nowhere. I wasn't there. You're absolutely right, and nothing I do can change that." "What do you want from us?" Sarah asked, fear creeping into her voice. "You can't take her from us. The adoption was legal, final." "Take her?" Nathaniel looked genuinely startled. "No, that's not my intention at all. You are Emma's parents, in every way that matters. I would never try to change that. Then what do you want? Mark pressed. Nathaniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. A chance to know her, to be part of her life in whatever capacity you're comfortable with, to help provide the opportunities she deserves. Sarah's mind was racing. The jobs, the scholarship, that was all. What, a way to buy access to our daughter? No, Nathaniel shook his head firmly. Those opportunities are real with no strings attached. Whether you allow me into Emma's life or not, they remain yours. Consider them reparations for 12 years of absence, if you will. And if we say no, Mark challenged, if we tell you to stay away from our family? Nathaniel met his gaze steadily. Then I'll respect your decision. You'll never hear from me again, beyond the professional context of your new positions. Sarah studied the man across from them, this wealthy stranger who had disrupted their lives with his revelation. He seemed sincere, but so much was at stake. We need time to process this, to decide what's best for Emma. Of course, Nathaniel agreed quickly. Take all the time you need, but there's one more thing you should know. He hesitated, then continued. I have no other children, no family left at all, actually. My parents are gone, I never married. Emma is my only living blood relation. The naked vulnerability in his statement hung in the air. Despite her anger and fear, Sarah felt a flicker of compassion for this man who had everything and nothing simultaneously. We'll think about it, she said finally, but if, and it's a big if, we decide to tell Emma about this, it will be on our terms, at our pace. That's all I ask, Nathaniel said, relief evident in his voice. Thank you. As they prepared to leave, Nathaniel handed them an envelope, my private contact information, and this might help you make your decision. Inside was a photograph Sarah had never seen before, a woman with striking hazel eyes and a determined expression, standing in front of MIT's main building. Elizabeth Winters, presumably. The resemblance to Emma was unmistakable. Back in their apartment at Orchard Heights, after relieving Mrs. Patel and checking that both children were asleep, Sarah and Mark sat at their kitchen table, the photograph between them like a living presence. She has her eyes, Sarah whispered, touching the image. I always wondered where those eyes came from. Mark's face was a mask of conflicting emotions. What are we going to do, Sarah? This changes everything. Does it? Sarah challenged gently. Emma is still our daughter. Nothing changes that. But she deserves to know the truth, Mark argued. And maybe having him in her life wouldn't be the worst thing. She could have opportunities we could never give her. Sarah nodded slowly. I'm scared, Mark. What if she loves him more than us? What if his money and privilege make our life seem inadequate? Mark took her hands in his. Emma's not like that. She values the right things. Rose made sure of that. At the mention of Sarah's mother, both fell silent. Rose had been their rock, helping raise Emma from infancy while Sarah and Mark worked multiple jobs. She had instilled in Emma a moral compass that pointed true north regardless of circumstances. Perhaps that's why Emma had returned the wallet, without hesitation, Rose's influence guiding her actions. I think we need to tell her, Sarah said finally. Not everything at once, but she deserves to know where she came from. And Harrington? Mark asked. Sarah took a deep breath. We'll allow a meeting. One meeting. Then we'll see how Emma feels about it all. The next morning, they found Emma at the kitchen table, already dressed for school, helping Jason with his math homework. The scene was so normal, so precious in its ordinariness, that Sarah almost lost her nerve. Emma, honey, she began cautiously, Dad and I need to talk to you about something important after school today. Emma looked up, her hazel eyes, so like the woman in the photograph, so like Nathaniel Harrington's, filled with concern. Is everything okay? Is it about the new jobs? Sort of, Mark said, forcing a smile. It's complicated, but nothing bad, I promise. Emma studied their faces, her perceptiveness one of her most defining traits. It's about Mr. Harrington, isn't it? The man whose wallet I found. Sarah and Mark exchanged surprised glances. How did you know? Sarah asked. Emma shrugged. Just a feeling. He looked at me funny, like he was trying to figure something out. And then all these opportunities came right after I met him. It seemed connected. Mark shook his head with a small, proud smile. "Nothing gets past you, does it, kiddo?" "Is he in trouble?" Emma asked. "Did he do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," Sarah assured her. "It's not like that. It's just... There's something about your birth that we haven't told you. Something we only just learned ourselves." Emma's expression shifted, realization dawning. "Is he related to me somehow?" The question, so direct and perceptive, left them momentarily speechless. Even at 12, Emma's intuition was remarkable. "That's part of what we need to talk about," Mark confirmed gently. "But right now you need to get to school. We'll explain everything this afternoon, I promise." Emma nodded solemnly, gathering her books. "Okay, but whatever it is, we'll be all right, won't we? We'll still be us." Sarah pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, inhaling the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Always, Emma. No matter what, we'll always be us." As Emma and Jason left for school, Sarah and Mark prepared for the conversation that would forever alter their family structure. A conversation about biological connections and chosen bonds, about honesty and second chances, about the complicated ways families could expand without breaking. Emma sat cross-legged on the living room sofa, her expression unnervingly calm as Sarah and Mark finished explaining everything they had learned from Nathaniel Harrington. The afternoon sun filtered through the worn curtains, casting long shadows across the faded carpet. "So he's my biological father," Emma said, testing the words. "And he wants to meet me." "Yes," Sarah confirmed, watching her daughter carefully. "But honey, you don't have to if you don't want to. Nothing has to change." Emma toyed with the frayed edge of a throw pillow. "But things already have changed, haven't they? Dad's new job, your promotion, my scholarship, those all came from him." Mark leaned forward. "We can turn them down, Emma. We managed before. We can manage again." "No," Emma said quickly. "That's not what I meant. I just..." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I've always known I was adopted. You never hid that from me. But now there's this actual person who's connected to me biologically, and he knows about me and he wants to be in my life." "It's a lot to process," Sarah acknowledged. "Did he say why he wasn't in my life before?" Emma asked, her voice smaller now. "Did he not want me?" The question broke Sarah's heart. Despite their openness about Emma's adoption, they'd never been able to completely shield her from the inherent question that haunted many adopted children. Why didn't they keep me? "It's complicated, sweetie," Mark said gently. "From what he told us, he didn't even know about you until recently. Your birth mother made the decision on her own. After his family pressured her," Sarah added, unwilling to sanitize the truth completely. "But he seems genuinely remorseful about that now." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing. "I think I want to meet him," she finally said, "just to see. Is that okay?" Sarah and Mark exchanged glances. They had discussed this possibility extensively the night before, preparing themselves for Emma's curiosity. "Of course it's okay," Sarah assured her. "We'll be with you the whole time." "Actually," Emma hesitated, "would it be all right if I met him first by myself? Just for a little while. I think it might be easier to talk without everyone watching each other." Mark's instinct was to refuse, to protect Emma from potential disappointment or manipulation. But something in her steady gaze reminded him of how she'd always faced challenges, head-on, with quiet determination. "If that's what you want," he said finally. "But we'll be nearby. Just say the word and we'll be right there." 2 days later, Emma sat in a private room at the Boston Public Library, her hands folded neatly in her lap as she waited. Sarah and Mark were in the main reading room, close, enough for comfort but respecting Emma's request for space. When Nathaniel Harrington entered, Emma was struck by how ordinary he seemed despite his extraordinary circumstances. Tall and lean, with hair more salt than pepper, he moved with the confident ease of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. But his eyes, hazel, like hers, revealed nervousness. "Hello, Emma," he said, remaining standing until she gestured toward the chair across from her. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Mr. Harrington, she replied, the formality feeling necessary. You wanted to see me. He smiled slightly. Nathaniel, please. And yes, I've wanted to see you for longer than you might realize. My parents told me you only found out about me recently, Emma said, getting straight to the point. How did that happen exactly? If Nathaniel was surprised by her directness, he didn't show it. About 6 months ago, I started looking for information about a child I might have had years ago. Your birth mother, Elizabeth Winters, and I were together briefly when we were much younger. When she told me she was pregnant, my parents intervened. They convinced her to leave Boston, gave her money to start over somewhere else. And you let them, Emma observed, no accusation in her tone, just stating a fact. Nathaniel nodded, accepting the implicit criticism. I did. I was 25, focused on building my company, and not ready to be a father. It's the greatest regret of my life. What changed? Why look for me now? Nathaniel's expression softened. As you get older, Emma, you start to realize what truly matters. I built an empire, but it's empty. No family to share it with. No legacy beyond material success. He paused. I wanted to know if somewhere out there I had a child. I needed to at least try to make amends for my absence. Emma considered this. And what do you want from me now? From my family? Nothing you're not willing to give, Nathaniel assured her. I'm not trying to replace your parents. Mark and Sarah have raised you beautifully. That much is obvious just from meeting you. I'm hoping for a place in your life, a chance to get to know you, to help provide opportunities your parents might not be able to afford. Like the scholarship? Emma said, and their jobs. Yes, Nathaniel acknowledged, though those opportunities are genuine and based on merit. Your academic record is outstanding. Your father's construction experience is valuable. Your mother's organizational skills are exactly what that office needed. But you made it happen because of me. I made it happen because I owe you 12 years of support, Nathaniel corrected gently. Whether or not you want a relationship with me, those opportunities remain. No strings attached. Emma nodded slowly, processing this. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small, worn photo album. My Grandma Rose helped me make this when I was 8, she explained, pushing it across the table. It's pictures of me growing up. Nathaniel opened the album with reverent hands. The first page showed a baby Emma, tiny and red-faced, in Sarah's arms. The next showed her first steps, then riding a tricycle, then dressed as a butterfly for Halloween. You were a beautiful child, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You still are. My mom says I have your eyes, Emma remarked, studying his face, and your stubbornness, though she didn't know that until now. Nathaniel laughed softly. A formidable combination. My mother, your biological grandmother, was the most determined person I've ever known. She could move mountains with sheer willpower. Is she still alive? Emma asked. No, Nathaniel replied quietly. She and my father both passed away several years ago. I'm afraid I'm your only living biological relative, as far as I know. Emma absorbed this information. That's sad, to not have family. It has been, Nathaniel agreed. Which is partly why finding you means so much to me. They talked for almost an hour. Emma asked about Elizabeth, her birth mother, and Nathaniel shared what he knew, that she had been brilliant and passionate about environmental science, that she'd had a laugh that filled rooms, that she'd loved her classical music and hiking in the mountains. What happened to her? Emma finally asked the question that had been hovering between them. Nathaniel's expression grew solemn. She moved to the West Coast after you were born. The investigator I hired discovered that she was in a car accident 5 years ago in Seattle. She didn't survive. Emma felt an unexpected pang of loss for a woman she'd never known. So I'll never meet her. I'm sorry, Emma, I wish things had been different. After a moment of silence, Emma straightened her shoulders. I think I'd like my parents to join us now. Is that okay? Of course, Nathaniel said, visibly relieved that she wanted to continue the conversation rather than end it. When Sarah and Mark entered the room, the tension was palpable. They sat on either side of Emma, a united front of family. Emma has been showing me her photo album, Nathaniel said, attempting to ease the atmosphere. You've given her a wonderful childhood. We've done our best, Mark replied, his tone guarded but not hostile. I've been thinking, Emma said suddenly, looking between the three adults. If we're going to try this, whatever this is, we need some ground rules. Sarah couldn't suppress a small, proud smile at her daughter's practicality. What kind of ground rules? Nathaniel asked, intrigued. First, no more secret investigations or accessing private records, Emma stated firmly. If you want to know something about me, just ask. Nathaniel nodded, properly chastened. Agreed. Second, no more surprise jobs or scholarships without talking to all of us first, Emma continued. It feels manipulative. That's fair, Nathaniel conceded. Third, Emma said, her voice softening slightly, if this is going to work, you have to respect that Mark and Sarah are my parents. They've been there my whole life. Absolutely, Nathaniel affirmed without hesitation. I have no intention of trying to replace them. And finally, Emma concluded, we take this slow. Maybe we could meet once a week, get to know each other gradually. Sarah squeezed Emma's hand, amazed at her daughter's maturity. At 12 years old, she was navigating a situation that would overwhelm many adults. Those terms are more than reasonable, Nathaniel said, looking genuinely impressed. You're quite the negotiator, Emma. She gets that from her mother, Mark said, the first hint of warmth entering his voice as he glanced at Sarah. A tentative plan began to take shape. Sunday brunches at a neutral location, a restaurant halfway, between Orchard Heights and Nathaniel's penthouse. The first few would include the entire family, including Jason, who had been told a simplified version of the situation. Later, if everyone was comfortable, Emma might spend occasional one-on-one time with Nathaniel. As they prepared to leave, Nathaniel handed Sarah an envelope. This isn't money, he clarified quickly, seeing her expression. It's information about Emma's medical history from my side of the family, things she should know about potential genetic predispositions. And there's a letter I wrote explaining more about Elizabeth and my relationship with her, for when Emma is older, perhaps. Sarah accepted the envelope, recognizing it, as the peace offering it was intended to be. Thank you. This is helpful. Outside the library, as they waited for their respective cars, an awkward moment arose, the uncertainty of how to say goodbye. Nathaniel seemed poised to extend his hand for a formal handshake, but Emma surprised everyone by stepping forward and giving him a quick, light hug. See you Sunday, she said simply, before rejoining her parents. As the Rileys drove back to Orchard Heights, Emma gazed out the window, lost in thought. You okay, sweetheart? Sarah asked, reaching back to touch her knee. Yeah, Emma replied. It's just weird, you know? A month ago, our biggest problem was the broken heater. Now I have a billionaire biological father who wants to be part of our lives. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, Mark said, his eyes meeting Emma's in the rearview mirror. The question is, are you okay with this arrangement? It's not too late to back out. Emma considered the question seriously. I think I want to try. Not just for the opportunities, but because, I don't know, everyone deserves a second chance, right? That's what Grandma Rose always said. Sarah felt her eyes misting. Rose had indeed believed in second chances, had lived her life by that principle. Perhaps this unexpected expansion of their family was Rose's final lesson for them all. One Sunday at a time, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her emotions. We'll figure it out together. 6 months passed. Winter surrendered to spring, and Boston shook off its snowy mantle for the vivid greens of May. The Sunday brunches had become a fixture in all their lives, sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but increasingly comfortable as the weeks progressed. For the Riley family, life had transformed in both subtle and dramatic ways. They had moved from Orchard Heights to a modest but charming 3-bedroom house in Dorchester, purchased with Nathaniel's help as an investment in Emma's stability, as he'd diplomatically phrased it. Mark's position at Harrington Constructions Community Division had proved to be more than just a courtesy appointment. His practical experience and leadership skills had earned him genuine respect among his colleagues. Sarah had flourished in her full-time role at the dental practice, recently being promoted to office manager. For Emma, the changes were even more profound. The educational opportunities provided by the Harrington Foundation Scholarship had opened doors she'd never imagined possible. Twice-weekly sessions with tutors, specializing in advanced mathematics and science, art classes at the Museum of Fine Arts, a summer program at MIT for gifted middle schoolers. Her world had expanded exponentially. But with new opportunities came new challenges. Emma straddled two increasingly different realities: the familiar, modest world of her parents and childhood friends, and the privileged sphere that Nathaniel introduced her to. It was this tension that bubbled to the surface one Sunday in late May. "I don't want to go to Franklin Prep," Emma announced abruptly, setting down her fork during brunch at the Bristol, the upscale restaurant that had become their regular meeting place. The three adults exchanged surprised glances. Franklin Preparatory Academy was one of Boston's most prestigious private schools, and Nathaniel had recently suggested that Emma apply for the coming fall. The application had been submitted with Emma's apparent consent, and her acceptance, virtually guaranteed given both her academic record and Nathaniel's influence, was expected any day. "I thought you were excited about their science program," Sarah said carefully, sensing an underlying issue. "The science program is amazing," Emma acknowledged, "but the people aren't. When we visited, everyone looked at me like I was some charity case, Nathaniel's project." Nathaniel winced, slightly at her use of his first name, something she did deliberately when she was creating distance. Most of the time now she called him Nate, a compromise they'd reached after Dad felt wrong and Mr. Harrington too formal. "Emma, those students don't know anything about our arrangement," he said gently. "And your academic credentials speak for themselves." "It's not just the students," Emma insisted. "It's the whole vibe. Everyone's so rich and polished and perfect. Their biggest problems are which Ivy League school they'll attend, or whether their family is vacationing in Europe or the Caribbean." Mark suppressed a smile, recognizing Rose's influence in Emma's disdain for superficiality. "If not Franklin, then where?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious rather than challenging. Emma straightened in her seat. "Mackenzie Academy has a great STEM program too, and it's more diverse, economically and racially. Plus, Zoe goes there." Zoe had been Emma's best friend since third grade, one of the few constants. Has other aspects of her life transformed? "Mackenzie is an excellent school," Nathaniel conceded, though he couldn't completely hide his disappointment. Franklin Prep was his alma mater, and Emma's attendance there had quietly meant a great deal to him. "I know you wanted me to go to your old school," Emma said, reading his expression with the uncanny perceptiveness she'd developed over their months together. "But I need to be somewhere I fit in, where I can just be Emma, not Nathaniel Harrington's biological daughter or the scholarship kid from Orchard Heights." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "You're right. This should be your decision." "We'll support whatever school you choose," Sarah added, "as long as it's the right fit for you." The tension dissipated, but the incident highlighted the evolving dynamics of their unusual family arrangement. Later, as Sarah and Mark took Jason to the aquarium, an arrangement that allowed Emma some one-on-one time with Nathaniel, the real issue emerged. "It's not really about the school, is it?" Nathaniel asked as they strolled along the Boston Harbor walkway, ice cream cones in hand despite the early hour. Emma sighed, licking a drip of chocolate before it could fall. "Not entirely. It's about everything changing so fast. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing who I was before." "Who were you before?" Nathaniel asked, genuinely curious. "Just Emma Riley, the girl with the straight A's and the hand-me-down clothes, the one who knew exactly who she was and where she belonged." She paused. "Now I'm between worlds. Not rich enough for your friends' kids, not normal enough anymore for some of my old friends." Nathaniel felt a pang of guilt. In his eagerness to provide opportunities, he hadn't fully considered the social complexities his presence would create in Emma's life. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "The last thing I wanted was to make things harder for you." "It's not your fault," Emma replied, surprising him with her generosity. "It's just growing pains, I guess. Mom says all families have them, even ones with normal setups." Nathaniel smiled at that. There's nothing normal about families, Emma. Each one is uniquely dysfunctional in its own special way. That startled a laugh out of her. Is that supposed to be comforting? Strangely, yes, it means we're not failing at this. We're just finding our way like everyone else. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching sailboats drift across the harbor. Can I ask you something? Emma said finally. Something serious? Anything, Nathaniel replied, meaning it. Do you ever wish you'd known about me from the beginning? That you'd raised me instead of Mom and Dad? The question caught him off guard with its directness. That's complicated. I can handle complicated, Emma said, an echo of Rose's no-nonsense attitude in her tone. Nathaniel considered his answer carefully. I wish I'd known about you, yes, I wish I'd had the courage to stand up to my parents and support your mother. But as for raising you instead of Mark and Sarah, he shook his head. The man I was 12 years ago wouldn't have been a good father. I was selfish, workaholic, emotionally unavailable. You got better parents than I would have been. And now I'm just grateful to have any place in your life at all, he answered honestly. Your parents have done an extraordinary job raising you. I would never want to undo that. Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. I was scared when I first found out about you, she admitted. I thought you might try to take me away from them. Never, Nathaniel assured her firmly. Your home is with them. But I'm glad to know you too, Emma added, leaning slightly against his arm in a rare gesture of affection, even if it's complicated sometimes. Across the city, Sarah and Mark were having their own conversation as Jason explored an interactive exhibit at the aquarium. She's pulling away from Franklin because it feels like choosing between us and him, Sarah observed. She doesn't want to hurt our feelings, Mark nodded. Probably, but Mackenzie really is a better fit for her personality, less pretentious. You think he'll try to change her mind? No, Mark said with surprising confidence. Whatever else he might be, Harrington respects Emma's decisions. He's learning not to push. Sarah smiled slightly. You're starting to like him, aren't you? Like is a strong word, Mark hedged, though his tone lacked its earlier hostility. But he's been fair, respectful of our role in Emma's life, and he seems to genuinely care about her, not just as some kind of legacy project. He invited us to that charity gala next month, Sarah reminded him, the one for foster children. Should we go? Mark considered this. Probably. It matters to Emma that we all get along, and it's for a good cause. The charity gala marked a significant milestone in their evolving relationship. Held at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, it brought together Boston's elite to raise funds for foster care programs throughout Massachusetts. For the first time, the Rileys would be publicly acknowledged as part of Nathaniel Harrington's extended family. The night of the gala, Emma stood in front of her bedroom mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The emerald green dress, her first formal gown, had been a joint gift from Sarah and Nathaniel, a symbolism not lost on any of them. Sarah had helped her with light makeup and arranged her hair in an elegant updo that made her look older than her 13 years. You look beautiful, sweetheart, Sarah said, appearing in the doorway in her own navy blue cocktail dress. Another first, purchased for this occasion. I'm nervous, Emma admitted. All those people, all those eyes. Just be yourself, Sarah advised, adjusting a bobby pin in Emma's hair. That's always enough. The gala proved to be both more intimidating and more rewarding than Emma had anticipated. Nathaniel introduced them proudly. My daughter, Emma, and her parents, Sarah and Mark, with a naturalness that suggested their unconventional arrangement was perfectly normal. Some of Boston's elite raised eyebrows, but most followed Nathaniel's lead, treating the Rileys with the same respect accorded to anyone in Harrington's circle. Late in the evening, as the fundraising auction concluded, Nathaniel took the stage to announce a new initiative, the Rose Principles Program, named after Emma's grandmother. The program would provide comprehensive support for teens in foster care, focusing not just on material needs, but on character development and ethical leadership. Emma, caught by surprise at hearing her grandmother's name, felt tears spring to her eyes. The idea came from Emma, Nathaniel explained to the crowd. She suggested that what many young people in difficult circumstances need most isn't just financial support, but guidance in making good choices. The program honors her grandmother, Rose, whose wisdom continues to inspire principles of integrity and compassion. Later, when Emma asked him why he hadn't told her about the program beforehand, Nathaniel smiled sheepishly. "I wanted it to be a surprise, a way to honor someone who clearly shaped you into the remarkable person you are." For the first time, Emma initiated a hug, throwing her arms around Nathaniel's neck. "Thank you," she whispered. "Grandma Rose would have loved that." As spring turned to summer, their unusual family unit settled into increasingly comfortable patterns. Emma chose Mackenzie Academy with Nathaniel's full support. The Rileys' new home became the site of regular Friday night dinners, where Nathaniel joined them for Sarah's cooking. Far simpler than the restaurant meals he was accustomed to, but filled with a warmth his penthouse lacked. There were still moments of tension, of course. Nathaniel occasionally overstepped, offering expensive gifts or opportunities without consulting Sarah and Mark first. Emma sometimes felt torn between loyalty to her parents and growing affection for the biological father who had entered her life so unexpectedly. The Rileys occasionally bristled at reminders of the vast financial gulf between their circumstances and Nathaniel's. But beneath these inevitable frictions lay a foundation of mutual respect that strengthened with each passing month. Mark found in Nathaniel a surprisingly receptive mentor for his ideas about sustainable community development. Sarah discovered an ally in her efforts to expand dental care access to underserved communities, and Emma blossomed with the knowledge that she was surrounded by 3 adults who, despite their differences, were united in their love for her. One evening in late August, as they sat on the Rileys' back porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk, Jason, who had observed their evolving dynamics with the unfiltered perspective of a 9-year-old, asked the question they'd all been avoiding. "So, what do we call ourselves now?" he inquired, looking between the adults. "Are we like a special kind of blended family?" The 3 adults exchanged glances, none quite sure how to answer. "We're exactly what we appear to be," Emma said, with the wisdom beyond her years that continually surprised them all. A family that chose to grow instead of break. 3 years passed, each season bringing new challenges and triumphs as their unconventional family unit evolved. Emma, now 16, had blossomed into a poised young woman with her grandmother Rose's moral compass, Sarah's compassion, Mark's quiet determination, and Nathaniel's sharp intellect. A unique blend of nature and nurture that sometimes left people wondering which traits came from which influence. Mackenzie Academy had indeed proved to be the right choice. Emma thrived among its diverse student body, maintaining her close friendship with Zoe while developing new relationships. Her science projects consistently won regional competitions, and her essay on ethical considerations in artificial intelligence had recently been published in a prestigious academic journal, an achievement that had made all 3 of her parents burst with pride. The Riley family had settled comfortably into their Dorchester home. Mark now ran Harrington Innovations' entire community development division, overseeing projects that transformed neglected neighborhoods with sustainable housing solutions. Sarah had completed a business management certificate program and expanded her role beyond the dental practice to coordinate several healthcare initiatives serving low-income communities, programs quietly funded by Nathaniel but driven by Sarah's vision. As for Nathaniel, the once isolated CEO had discovered something he'd never expected: the simple pleasures of family life. Friday dinners at the Rileys remained sacred on his calendar. He helped Jason with science fair projects, attended Emma's debate competitions, and even joined Mark for occasional fishing trips, activities that would have seemed inconceivably mundane to his younger self but now formed the bedrock of his week. Yet despite these harmonious developments, Emma remained troubled by something, a restlessness that manifested in long walks around the neighborhood and quiet moments of contemplation. It was during one such walk on a crisp September afternoon that the incident occurred that would spark her biggest inspiration yet. Emma had wandered into downtown Crossing, people watching and window shopping, when she noticed a boy about 12, years old, hovering near a businessman at a crowded street corner. The man was speaking animatedly on his phone, gesturing with his free hand while clutching an expensive-looking leather portfolio. As the crosswalk signal changed and people surged forward, the portfolio slipped from under his arm, falling to the sidewalk unnoticed as he continued across the street. The boy spotted it immediately. Emma watched as he glanced around, then snatched up the portfolio. She expected him to disappear into the crowd with his prize, but instead he hesitated, turning the expensive item over in his hands with an expression of indecision that she recognized all too well, the same internal debate she'd experienced 3 years earlier with Nathaniel's wallet. "Hey!" Emma called out, approaching the boy. "You're thinking about whether to keep it or return it, aren't you?" The boy startled, clutching the portfolio defensively. "I wasn't stealing it. It fell." "I know," Emma said gently. "I saw. But now you have a choice to make." The boy's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What do you care?" "Because I was in your exact position once," Emma replied. 3 years ago I found a wallet that belonged to a rich man. It had thousands of dollars inside." "Did you keep it?" the boy asked, curiosity overtaking defensiveness. "No, I ran after him and gave it back." "Why?" "Nobody would have known." "I would have known," Emma said simply. "And it turned out to be one of the most important decisions of my life." The boy looked skeptical. "What, did he give you a reward or something?" "It's a long story," Emma laughed, "but the short version, that man turned out to be my biological father, though neither of us knew it at the time. Returning his wallet changed everything, not just for me, but for my whole family." The boy's eyes widened. "For real?" "For real," Emma confirmed. "But here's the thing. Even if he'd just said thank you and walked away, it still would have been the right choice. Integrity isn't about rewards, it's about who you are when nobody's watching." The boy looked down at the portfolio, then across the street, where the businessman was now frantically patting his pockets, realizing his loss. "I guess I should give it back." "I think that's a good decision," Emma said. "Want me to go with you?" Together they crossed at the next light and approached the distressed businessman. When the boy held out the portfolio, the man's relief was palpable. "You found it. Thank God, my entire presentation for the board is in here. I would have been ruined." He reached for his wallet. "Let me give you something for your honesty." The boy glanced at Emma, then straightened his shoulders. "You don't have to do that, sir. It was the right thing to do." The businessman paused, struck by the response. "Well, thank you. Seriously. You've restored my faith in humanity today." He pulled out a business card. "I'm Rick Stevens, VP at Meridian Technologies. If you ever need anything, a recommendation for college, an internship when you're older, call me. I mean it." As they walked away, the boy seemed taller somehow, his step lighter. "That felt good," he admitted. "What's your name?" Emma asked. "Darius," he replied. "Darius Washington." "Where do you live, Darius?" "Franklin Hill," he said, naming one of Boston's public housing developments. "With my grandmother and sister." "Does your grandmother know you're downtown by yourself?" Darius looked away. "School got out early. I was just walking around." Emma recognized the evasion. "How about I walk you to the T station? We can talk on the way." During their journey, Emma learned that Darius was raising himself in many ways. His grandmother worked long hours as a hospital custodian, and his older sister had after-school activities. He spent most afternoons alone, navigating the streets of Boston, with the street-smart independence of a child who had grown up too quickly. "Do you like science?" Emma asked as they approached the station. Darius shrugged. "It's okay, I'm better at math." "There's a free tutoring program at the community center near Franklin Hill," Emma told him. "I know because my Nathaniel funds it through his foundation." "Nathaniel Harrington?" Darius asked, eyes widening. "From Harrington Innovations? That's your dad?" "One of them," Emma smiled. "It's complicated. But yes, he helps run this program. They have robotics classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You should check it out." Before they parted, Emma took out a notebook and wrote down her phone number. "If you ever go to the center, let me know how you like it. And Darius, what you did today, returning that portfolio, that was brave. Not everyone would have made that choice. That evening, as the Riley family plus Nathaniel gathered for their Friday dinner, Emma was unusually quiet, pushing her lasagna around her plate rather than eating it. "Everything okay, Em?" Mark asked, noticing her distraction. Emma set down her fork. "I've been thinking about something big." The three adults exchanged glances, familiar with Emma's big ideas that usually led to passionate projects. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Sarah prompted. "Today I met this boy Darius. He found a businessman's portfolio and was trying to decide whether to keep it or return it. It reminded me of when I found Nate's wallet." She glanced at Nathaniel, who smiled at her use of the nickname that had become comfortable over the years. "Did he return it?" Nathaniel asked. "Yes, but that's not the point," Emma continued. "Talking with him got me thinking about how many kids face those kinds of moral crossroads every day, moments where they have to choose between what's easy and what's right, and most of them don't have someone like Grandma Rose teaching them about integrity." "That's true," Mark agreed. "Character? Education isn't exactly a priority in most schools these days." "So I had an idea," Emma said, her eyes brightening with enthusiasm. "What if we created a program specifically focused on ethical decision-making for kids? Not just lectures about being good, but practical workshops and real-world scenarios. We could call it the Crossroads Project, or maybe the Integrity Initiative." "I like it," Sarah said. "But who's we? And how would this program work exactly?" Emma leaned forward, her passion evident. "It could be a partnership between the Rose Principles Program and Mackenzie Academy. Students from my school could mentor younger kids like Darius, using case studies and role-playing exercises to work through ethical dilemmas. We could offer incentives for positive choices, not bribes, but recognition and opportunities." "Like internships," Nathaniel suggested. "Exactly," Emma nodded vigorously. "And college application support, leadership training, that kind of thing. We'd be creating a pathway from good choices to real opportunities." Nathaniel was already reaching for his phone, making notes. "The foundation could certainly fund something like this. We'd need to develop a curriculum, identify partner schools, recruit mentors." "Slow down, you two," Sarah laughed. "Emma hasn't even finished presenting her idea." "Actually, Mom," Emma grinned, "I think Nate's already on board. What about you and Dad? Would you help?" "Of course," Mark said without hesitation. "You know I've been wanting to expand the community center programming. This would fit perfectly." "It's a beautiful idea, Emma," Sarah added. "Rose would be so proud." Over the next 6 months, the Integrity Initiative moved from concept to reality with remarkable speed. Emma developed the core curriculum as part of her independent study project at Mackenzie, drawing on psychological research about moral development and decision-making. Nathaniel provided funding through the Rose Principles program and leveraged his business connections to secure impressive opportunities for participants. Mark organized physical spaces in community centers across Boston, while Sarah coordinated with school counselors to identify students who might benefit most. The program launched with a pilot group of 30 middle schoolers, including Darius Washington, who had indeed started attending the robotics classes Emma had recommended. The curriculum centered around weekly workshops, where students explored ethical dilemmas through interactive scenarios, followed by mentoring sessions with high school volunteers from Mackenzie and other partner schools. What made the program unique was its tangible reward system. Students weren't simply praised for making good choices, they were connected to concrete opportunities. Everything from summer internships to college application assistance to job shadowing with local professionals. The message was clear. Integrity wasn't just a moral abstraction, but a practical path to real-world success. By spring, the Integrity Initiative had garnered attention from local media. The Boston Globe ran a feature highlighting several success stories, including Darius, who had gone from aimless afternoons downtown to leading his school's newly formed robotics team, a transformation he explicitly credited to his chance encounter with Emma. "Before I met Emma Riley, I wasn't really thinking about my future," he told the reporter. "Now I want to study engineering. I want to build things that help people. The article caught the attention of the governor's office, which was seeking innovative youth programs to highlight during an upcoming education summit. An invitation arrived requesting that Emma present the Integrity Initiative to an audience of educators, policymakers, and potential funders from across the state. They want me to speak? Emma asked incredulously when Nathaniel showed her the invitation. In front of all those important people? You're the heart of this program, Nathaniel reminded her. No one can explain it better than you. But I've never given a speech like that before, Emma protested. What if I mess up? Then you'll recover and keep going, Sarah assured her, just like you've done with everything else in your life. Besides, Mark added with a wink, you've got 3 parents to help you prepare. Most kids only get 2. The week before the summit, Emma practiced her speech relentlessly. Sarah helped her refine her delivery. Mark advised on connecting with the audience, and Nathaniel coached her on handling questions from officials and potential donors. Jason, now 12 and fiercely proud of his sister, served as her most critical practice audience, interrupting with increasingly challenging questions to test her responses. The night before the presentation, Emma sat on the back porch with Nathaniel, enjoying the first truly warm evening of the year. Stars punctuated the clear sky above, a rarity in Boston's typically light-polluted firmament. Nervous about tomorrow? Nathaniel asked. Terrified, Emma admitted, but also excited. This could mean so much for the program, for kids like Darius. You've done something remarkable, Emma, Nathaniel said quietly. At 16, you've created something that's already changing lives. I had help, Emma reminded him. A lot of it. Yes, but the vision was yours. The spark. Nathaniel hesitated, then continued. You know, when I first found out about you, I was focused on what I could give you. Opportunities, education, financial security. I never imagined how much you would give to others, or to me. Emma turned to look at him, surprised by the emotion in his voice. What have I given you? Nathaniel smiled, his eyes reflecting the starlight. Purpose, connection, a legacy that matters. Before you came into my life, I measured success in dollars and market share. Now I understand there are far more meaningful metrics. Like integrity, Emma suggested. Like integrity, Nathaniel agreed, and family, and the ripple effect of small choices that create big changes. As they sat in comfortable silence, Emma reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a simple choice, to return a wallet. She couldn't help wondering what her life would have been like if she'd made a different decision that day, if she'd succumbed to the temptation of easy money instead of following her grandmother's teachings. One choice. One moment of integrity, and from it countless ripples spreading outward, touching lives she hadn't even known existed. Tomorrow she would stand before the governor and other dignitaries to tell her story. But tonight, under the stars with one of her 3 parents, she simply felt grateful for the unexpected path her life had taken. The Massachusetts Education Summit transformed the Integrity Initiative from a local Boston program into a statewide model almost overnight. Emma's speech, heartfelt, articulate, and disarmingly honest, captivated the audience of educators, politicians, and philanthropists. She spoke not as a polished professional, but as a passionate advocate, tracing the journey from a single act of honesty to a program that was reshaping young lives across the city. Integrity isn't just about doing the right thing when someone's watching, she told the packed auditorium. It's about the choices we make when no one would ever know the difference. Those private moments of decision define who we become, one small choice at a time. By the time she finished describing Darius's transformation and the dozens of similar stories emerging from the program, funding offers were already pouring in. The governor himself approached the Riley Harrington family afterward, promising state support to expand the Integrity Initiative to schools throughout Massachusetts. Your daughter is extraordinary, he told Sarah, Mark, and Nathaniel, who stood together in a united front of parental pride. She's managed to address character education in a way that's neither preachy nor abstract. That's no small feat. She gets her practicality from her mother, Mark said with a smile. And her idealism from her father, Sarah added, glancing at Mark. And her eloquence from her grandfather, Nathaniel contributed, referring to his own father's reputation as a gifted orator, a rare compliment to a man he'd often criticized. As they drove home that evening, Emma dozed in the back seat, emotionally exhausted from the day's events. Sarah watched her sleeping daughter, marveling at the poised young woman who had somehow emerged from their once struggling family circumstances. "Did you ever imagine this?" she whispered to Mark. 3 years ago, when she first brought home to that business card. Mark shook his head, keeping his eyes on the road. "Not in my wildest dreams. I was just hoping we'd make rent that month." From the passenger seat, Nathaniel cleared his throat softly. "I should thank you both again. You could have shut the door in my face when I first approached you. Many parents would have." "We considered it," Mark admitted with a chuckle. "But we've always tried to do what's best for Emma, even when it's complicated." "Besides," Sarah added, "Rose always taught Emma that family could come in unexpected forms. We were just following her wisdom too." 2 years later, as Emma prepared to graduate from Mackenzie Academy as valedictorian, the Integrity Initiative had expanded beyond anyone's initial expectations. What had begun as a modest program in Boston now operated in 47 schools across Massachusetts, with pilot programs launching in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. A research team from Harvard's Graduate School of Education was tracking outcomes, documenting significant improvements in academic performance, decreased disciplinary issues, and higher college acceptance rates among participants. Emma, now 18, had grown into her role as the program's founder and chief spokesperson. Though she remained humble about her achievements, she had developed a quiet confidence that served her well as she balanced her advocacy work with the normal challenges of senior year, college applications, prom planning, and the bittersweet anticipation of leaving home. The college decision had been particularly complex. With her stellar academic record and impressive extracurricular achievements, Emma had been accepted to all 8 universities she'd applied to, including Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and Yale, her biological father's alma mater. "I'm not going to influence your decision," Nathaniel had promised when the acceptance letters arrived. "This is entirely your choice." But the pressure was there nonetheless, unspoken but palpable. Yale represented a connection to Nathaniel's past. MIT had been her birth mother's school. Harvard offered the proximity to home that would allow her to remain closely involved with the Integrity Initiative. Stanford promised distance and independence. In the end, Emma chose Brown University, a decision that surprised everyone but ultimately made perfect sense. Brown's open curriculum would allow her to combine her interests in social entrepreneurship, psychology, and public policy without forcing her to choose a narrow path too soon, and Providence was close enough to Boston for regular visits home while still providing the space to develop her own identity beyond her increasingly public role. "I need room to figure out who I am outside of the program and our family story," she explained to her 3 parents over dinner. "I love what we've built together, but I don't want it to define my entire future." "That's wise," Sarah acknowledged, though Emma could see the hint of sadness in her mother's eyes at the thought of her leaving, even if just to neighboring Rhode Island. "Besides," Emma added with a grin, "Darius got into MIT's engineering program. Someone needs to keep an eye on the Integrity Initiative while I'm focusing on college." Darius Washington had indeed become Emma's most dedicated lieutenant, helping to refine the program's approach for students from backgrounds similar to his own. Now 17 and headed to MIT with a full scholarship, he embodied the program's potential to transform lives through a combination of ethical guidance and practical opportunity. On the evening before her graduation ceremony, Emma found herself alone in the backyard of their Dorchester home, sitting on the wooden swing that Mark had built years earlier. The spring air carried the scent of lilacs from the bushes Sarah had planted along the fence, their sweet fragrance a reminder of Grandma Rose, who had loved them. The sound of the back door opening interrupted her reverie. Nathaniel stepped onto the porch, 2 mugs of tea in hand. "Your mom thought you might want some company," he said, offering her one of the steaming cups, "and something warm. The temperature's dropping. Emma accepted the tea gratefully, wrapping her hands around the ceramic mug. Thanks, I was just thinking about tomorrow, and everything that comes after. Nathaniel settled beside her on the swing. Nervous about your speech? A little, Emma admitted. It's not the speaking part. I've done enough of that with the Integrity Initiative. It's more about finding the right words to capture everything. How much has changed? How far we've all come. Sometimes the simplest words are the most powerful, Nathaniel suggested. You don't need elaborate rhetoric to speak truth. They swung gently in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the evening sky. I have something for you, Nathaniel said finally, reaching into his jacket pocket. A graduation gift of sorts, though it's not exactly traditional. He handed her a small worn leather wallet, burgundy, with a distinctive monogram on one corner. Emma recognized it immediately. Your wallet, she said softly, turning it over, in her hands. The one I found that day. The one that brought us together, Nathaniel nodded. I've kept it all these years, even though it's a bit battered now. I thought you should have it, a reminder of how a single moment of integrity can change everything. Emma opened the wallet, surprised to find it wasn't empty. Inside was a folded piece of paper, a check made out to the Integrity Initiative, for a sum that made her gasp. $20 million, she whispered, staring at the figure. Nate, this is seed funding, Nathaniel finished for her, to establish the Integrity Initiative as an independent national foundation. The board of directors will include you, your parents, Darius, and several education experts. You'll be able to expand the program nationwide while you're in college and beyond. Emma was speechless, her eyes filling with tears. This isn't about buying your affection or trying to influence your future, Nathaniel continued quickly. It's about ensuring that the remarkable thing you've created will have the resources to grow and thrive, to reach kids who need it most, regardless of where they live or their economic circumstances. I don't know what to say, Emma managed. Finally, you don't need to say anything, Nathaniel assured her. Just promise me you'll never lose sight of what makes this program special, the personal connection, the emphasis on choices rather than rules, the belief that integrity is its own reward, but that practical opportunities matter too. I promise, Emma said, closing the wallet and holding it tight. Thank you, not just for this, but for everything, for respecting Mom and Dad's place in my life, for finding ways to be part of our family without trying to replace anyone. I should be thanking you, Nathaniel replied, his voice thick with emotion. You and your parents welcomed me into your lives when you had every reason not to. You've taught me more about family and integrity than Harvard Business School and 40 years in corporate America ever could. The back door opened again, and Sarah and Mark emerged onto the porch, followed by Jason, now 14 and nearly as tall as his father. Everything okay out here? Sarah asked, noticing Emma's tears. Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. Better than okay. Nate just gave me his wallet, the one that started everything. And something else too. She hesitated, not wanting to mention the check directly in front of Jason, who still didn't fully understand the family's financial arrangements. Something for the future of the Integrity Initiative, Nathaniel explained, diplomatically. Mark raised an eyebrow, recognizing there was more to the story, but let it pass. Well, in the spirit of meaningful gifts, your mother and I have something for you too, Emma. Sarah handed her a small package wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a delicate silver locket with an intricate rose design etched on its surface. When Emma opened it, she found a tiny photograph of Grandma Rose on one side and a miniature handwritten quote on the other. Character is doing the right thing when nobody's watching. It's beautiful, Emma whispered, immediately putting it around her neck. We wanted you to carry a piece of your grandmother with you to Brown, Sarah explained. She would have been so proud of you, Emma, of everything you've become. She would have been proud of all of us, Emma said, looking around at her unconventional family gathered on the porch, for figuring out how to grow instead of break, for creating something new instead of fighting over the past. Mark cleared his throat, clearly emotional. Speaking of the future, I think this calls for ice cream. Last family ice cream run before Emma becomes a college student. Who's in? Always room for ice cream, Jason declared with teenage authority. As they piled into Mark's car, a modest hybrid SUV that had replaced their old sedan when Nathaniel had tried to gift them a luxury vehicle and Sarah had firmly declined, Emma found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. In the front seat, Sarah and Mark held hands as they had for as long as she could remember. Beside her, Jason and Nathaniel debated the relative merits of chocolate versus vanilla with the comfortable familiarity of people who had shared countless similar conversations. Tomorrow she would stand before her graduating class and try to articulate what she had learned over these extraordinary years. She would speak about integrity and opportunity, about choices that shape destinies, about the ripple effects of single actions. But the most important lesson, about the capacity of love to transcend biology, circumstance, and convention, would be evident in the three proud parents watching from the audience. The following day, as Emma concluded her valedictory address, she looked out at the sea of faces before her, classmates and teachers, friends and mentors, and in the front row, her family. Sarah and Mark sat on either side of Nathaniel, the three of them forming a united front of support, as they had since that first uncertain meeting years ago. In closing, Emma said, her voice clear and confident, I want to share something my grandmother taught me long before I understood its true value. Your integrity is the one thing nobody can take from you. Even when your pockets are empty, your character can be full. I've been fortunate enough to see firsthand how a single honest act can set in motion events that transform not just one life, but many. When I returned a wallet to a stranger that day in downtown Boston, I couldn't have imagined that he would turn out to be my biological father, or that our unexpected connection would lead to the Integrity Initiative, or that I would be standing here today addressing all of you. What I've learned through this journey is that families aren't defined by blood or circumstance, but by love and choice. That integrity isn't just an abstract virtue, but a practical path to possibility, and that sometimes the smallest decisions have the greatest impact. As we leave Mackenzie today and move toward our various futures, I challenge each of you to consider the power of your everyday choices. The person you become isn't shaped by dramatic moments of heroism, but by the quiet decisions you make when no one is watching. The wallet returned, the truth spoken, the hand extended in kindness. These are the choices that define us. These are the moments that matter. And these are the actions that can, in ways we may never fully comprehend, change everything. As applause erupted throughout the auditorium, Emma touched the locket at her throat, feeling as though Grandma Rose was somehow present, witnessing this moment of culmination and new beginning. From one small act of honesty had grown not only a program that was changing young lives across the country, but a family that had defied convention to create something uniquely beautiful, a living testament to the power of integrity, second chances, and the extraordinary strength of chosen bonds. The wallet that had started it all now rested in Emma's graduation gown pocket, a tangible reminder that the most valuable things in life weren't made of leather and currency, but of choices and connections, of principles and possibilities, of the courage to do the right thing even when no one would ever know the difference.